All right, welcome to another episode of Piecing It Together, the podcast where we take a look at a new movie and try to figure out what movies inspired it. And today on the show, it is our last of 2021, and we are looking at The Matrix Resurrections, The Return to the Matrix, directed by Lana Wachowski. No Lily Wachowski this time, but back is Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and a whole bunch of other characters, but a bunch of new actors. But, we'll get into some of those decisions as we get into the conversation. This is a little bit of a different episode, though, than our usual thing. Usually it's just one-on-one, me talking to one person. We each have 5 or 6 puzzle pieces, something like that. This time around, this is a super episode. We've done a few of these over the years. It's been a while since the last one. I think it was The Rise of Skywalker. But instead of one conversation, I'm going to have 5 small conversations, and each guest is bringing a few puzzle pieces apiece. And at the end, maybe I'll fill in a few of the other pieces that I had thought of ahead of time. But I'm going to be talking to Shaurya Chawla, Joe Black, Jack Hunter, JC, and P. Abeyta. And we'll talk to each of them, get some puzzle pieces from them, their thoughts on the movies. We got a wide range of points of view on this movie. This has been quite a polarizing Matrix sequel, especially if you get on Twitter, Twitter lately has just been, I don't even know what to say about it. But there's a lot of different opinions on this movie, and we'll get into all of those across these conversations. So before we do get to those conversations, I do want to remind you, as always, to make sure you're subscribed to Piecing It Together wherever you listen to podcasts. You can rate and review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify now, or also over on Podchaser or Good Pods, and we do appreciate those 5-star ratings if you like what we do here on the show. You could also follow us on social media at Piecing Pod on all the major social media apps, and join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces, where we continue the conversation about all the movies we talk about here on the show. And last but not least, I want to remind you we do have a Patreon where I post advanced content from Piecing It Together, as well as bonus content from Piecing It Together, and Awesome Movie Year, which is another movie podcast I produce, and stuff from my music career. So there is a lot of great content over there. It is patreon.com/bydavidrosen. If you really like all the stuff that I'm involved with, maybe check it out and subscribe. So with all that said, let's get to this very long, multi-part conversation about The Matrix Resurrections. All right, so I got a bunch of people lined up to talk to today, and starting it off, we've got Shaurya Chawla from YouTube and ScreenRant. Shaurya, thanks so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, David.
Yeah, absolutely. This movie is such a big deal to me and to so many other people who, The Matrix is like, from our generation of growing up with a, big giant sci-fi, thing, that this was such a big one. And, we just did our Piecing It Together episode on the original Matrix trilogy and talked a whole lot about its impact and all that. So to finally have another movie in this series, I just thought it would make sense to do this whole super episode thing that we've done a few times here in the past on this show and talk to a whole bunch of people. And so you're the first one I'm talking to. And I guess we'll just jump right into it. Were you very much looking forward to this movie?
I actually, arguably, this was my most anticipated movie of the year. Ever since, I've revisited the sequels especially, it's like you sort of get an appreciation for them a little bit more, and you notice things that you missed the first time. And so when I heard that they were, considering it, I thought, yeah, the possibilities are there, because you ended Revolutions on a definitive, but still note, like, maybe there could be more going forward, especially with that line, which the Oracle says, it's like, will we see Neo again? It's like, I suppose. It's like, oh, yeah, okay. So, to say I was excited for this is an understatement. And if anyone followed me on social media, like you have also noticed, like, I was excited, like, all those posts because of the trailers.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get into, as we go through this conversation, how well it delivered on the promise of a new Matrix movie. But we're going to get into just a couple of puzzle pieces here in this conversation. So let's get to your puzzle pieces. What do you have for your first one?
I mean, we have to go with the first Matrix. It's a big one, for this movie. When you think about it, it's like, obviously there's other things that have come out in years since that you can look at, and there was one more I'll mention in a second, but
Sure.
really the first Matrix movie is, yeah, there's so much of that in here, and in meta ways, self-referential ways,
Yeah.
of course, but also in terms of plot continuations and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the lazy thing to do, which, and we could get into a whole side thing of the reaction to this movie that we have both seen, and we kind of talked a little bit about beforehand, just about how some fans are not exactly happy with this movie, whereas we both enjoyed this movie quite a bit. But I feel like the lazy thing to do would be to completely rest on being inspired by itself and just do the whole Matrix thing all over again and not add anything to it, whereas Lana had very different things on her mind and wanted to go in very different directions, comment on a lot of other things about movie making, about the where we are right now in our relationship to entertainment, and various other ideas put into the world of the Matrix. And that's what makes this movie like so not just special but successful as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. In fact, in a lot of ways, this felt like the antithesis of everything that they'd done in the earlier movies. I mean, well, in this case, Lana. But it almost feels like a self-critique. It's like it's looking at all the stuff that, like, The Matrix at the end of the day is an ideological film. It's a film that's going for concepts that are more human. And it's trying to talk about what the world is like around us. But a lot of people, and in the movie makes note of this, it's like bullet time and the cool whoosh sequences and everything. But that's that's not the point of the Matrix. So it's almost like this movie is critiquing that very often. It's like that's not our goal. In fact, it almost uses those cool things like that people have come to love against it. In more ways than one, especially with the. I mean, I don't want to go into spoilers. Like, there's people.
Well, spoilers are fine on piecing it together. We always assume people have watched the movie or don't care about spoilers because, especially with a movie like this, you kind of got to get into them. So feel free to spoil away if it works its way into one of your pieces here.
Okay, sounds good.
But let's see what you got next. What do you have for your next piece?
Well, someone mentioned this, and this is a very recent example, but I actually was gonna go with Free Guy. And it's a movie that's based in a video game world, and obviously we're following Ryan Reynolds as an NPC character, and it's like the world around you is not real, and these very much similar to Resurrections. It's like, you have sentience or other people from the outside world coming in and, like, running things. I mean, obviously the effect is different in that they're treated as throwaway people in the world of the game in that one. But I think especially with the game parallel that's in Resurrections, especially the first act of it, it's like there were moments in that where I felt like there is a commentary in there, and you even have Game Awards mentioned a couple of times, which then when all of that happens, I don't know why, it just sort of connected. Like, this is one of the two movies this year that almost critiques this part of the digital world.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny because, The Matrix was obviously a puzzle piece on our Free Guy episode, and here it comes back around. And I do think the idea of changing within the world of the movie that, it's not these movies that the guy was a part of, it's the games that he was a part of, and making the whole world of the Matrix that we had previously seen be part of a video game. It fits so much more just because of the way video games suck people in, and so it's like it really makes sense in a way with the way people spend hours and hours and hours and years of their lives in these games nowadays. And so it makes sense that that's what the Matrix would end up being.
Something as trivial as that, which even is critiqued in the movie itself. It's like, you take this entire legacy just to make it into a video game. And, it's like there's something more to the story, but you're just making it into this thing that people can just play, and it means nothing to them beyond, we can do cool stuff in here, but there's so much more to it. And I don't know, I think it all plays into the identity commentary of the Matrix series, which the Wachowskis have really embroidered into it, I guess.
Yeah, and especially now, I mean,
Hmm.
it's pretty clear in this one that oh, that was all there the whole time, even
Mm.
though it was always like a kind of rumored thing or like
Mm.
theories and whatnot, but it's as there as can be at this point, I'd
Absolutely.
say. So, do you have any more pieces you wanted to bring up?
Actually, the third one I was gonna say is an obvious one,
Hmm.
but it's Inception.
Sure.
But which Inception was often brought up as well, since we're going with the puzzle piece concept, was often the Matrix was brought up in that, and how there were concepts of what the dream world was like, and the stuff that
Hmm.
you could accomplish in that obviously you can't do in person. Like, you can't fly and have anti-gravity battles in the real world.
Right.
And then you're hooked up to a machine, obviously, and you're going in. And I remember at the time there were comparisons to the Matrix when that came out, and now it's like full circle, just like with Free Guy. It's full circle with that too. It's like we've come around to this point with the Resurrections as well, where there were moments that kind of reminded me of it.
Yeah. No, totally. And yeah, that's something that kind of jumped out at me on my recent rewatches of the Matrix trilogy is just how much of an impact I think they probably had on Christopher Nolan. And yeah, Inception totally then comes full circle here to Matrix Resurrections. And I think that this movie also it has that same thing of like, your audience better be along for the ride of, which level of dream world that they are in at this point, because otherwise it's like, forget about it, you're going to be completely lost. But the director kind of just trusting that their audience is going to be able to hang.
Absolutely, and since this one is especially built on the sequels, the legacy that they've left behind, and even the canonical games, which is they reference more than once in Resurrections, especially Matrix Online,
Yeah.
with Morpheus. Like, there is a reason you don't see Lawrence Fishburne in this because of something that happens in that game.
Yeah.
So I think with all of that in mind, and the Wachowskis have said that's canon. So with all of that in mind, when you get into Resurrections, it's like you knew everything going in. You had to, because it's
Yeah.
built on an entire legacy that's gone on for years, and just these stories that people have been telling and expanding that world, the digital world. So yeah, it feels like it's all come together, like a culmination.
Absolutely. So yeah, I think that's a great list of a few pieces right there, and I'm sure we're going to get a wide range of pieces as I get through the other conversations I have scheduled for this this whole super episode. Are there any other thoughts you wanted to bring up before we close this thing up?
Well, like I said before we started off recording, we were talking about it a bit. I understand the divisions for the movie. I absolutely do. I understand why people would dislike it, but I understand why people are loving the movie as well. I mean, we both quite enjoyed the film. And yes, I would say, like, as my most anticipated movie of the year, I think for the most part it does deliver what I expected a Matrix sequel to deliver. And
Hmm.
there are shortcomings. There were things that I think could have been handled a little bit better, especially with the meta commentary. I feel like at one point it becomes the victim of its own critique, if you will, because, like, okay, so now we're critiquing sequels, but now you're becoming the same sequel. So hold
Right.
on.
Well, it's funny. It's $150 million blockbuster. I mean, at some point, the
Yeah.
cynical side of yourself wants to say, like, well, come on,
And we have to make the most of that 150
Yeah.
mil, and so you get a big third act, which is fine. But yeah, at the end of the day, I've seen the movie thrice now, once in theaters, twice on HBO Max, and frankly, I think it's gotten better for me as I watched it. Certain ideas sort of process a lot better, and I'm so curious for what's going to happen in a few years, like when people talk more about this movie in days to come, like, because actually someone brought this up. It's like, also it's like Last Jedi in that subversive way, and
Sure.
it does some things which took a while for some people to, like, look back on and say, oh, that's what you're doing. And
Right.
it's like, now you see a lot of lists list that as one of the best Star Wars movies. I mean, I'm not saying that's going to happen with this. Maybe it will. But
Yeah.
I think there's a conversation that's going to go on for a long time with this one.
Just based on what you were just saying there, I think the weird thing is that The Matrix is one of the most influential
Mm.
movies of the last 25 years, probably. I don't see this movie being influential that much in any way. I can't imagine other filmmakers taking things from the movie, but I think as an entry in the series, I think people will grow to really love it and really love just how bold and weird and different of a direction that Lana took it, and that it ends up becoming like a vital part of what The Matrix is as a series. And I think that is, in some ways, just as important. I mean, you only get one Matrix series, and so
Absolutely.
for a movie to come out and like really be a big part of what makes The Matrix, I think that's an important thing too.
Absolutely, I completely agree with that.
So, Shaurya, before we leave, why don't you tell people where they can find you and your YouTube channel and everything else you're up to?
All right, so you guys can find me on ScreenRant right now. I'm a writer over there. We talk a lot about whatever's coming out, and in fact, I've just written a few things on the Matrix Resurrections, including some questions that you may want some answers to. So you can check me out over there. I'm also on YouTube, as my channel is my name, and where I also reviewed the Matrix Resurrections. So you can come check that out as well. And of course, you can find me on Twitter under the same name, and would love to talk to you guys on there as well.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here, and hopefully we'll get you on a full episode one of these days soon.
Thanks, man. It was an honor being here.
All right, Joe Black is with us now to talk about Matrix Resurrections. Joe, how's it going?
It's going great. The Matrix is out. How could it be going any other way?
So exciting to be going back to where it all started, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh yeah, what a literal statement you just made.
There you go. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Joe, I'm not 100% sure here. You've been on the show many times before, but I'm trying to remember. Are you a Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions guy?
Yes.
You are.
Yes,
That's what I thought.
Yeah. I kind of count them like the Kill Bill movies, where I think of those as like parts 1 and 2. Like
Of the
it's one
same
movie
thing.
to me.
Yeah.
And that one movie, if you will, is maybe in my top 20 of all time.
Okay.
I adore those films. The first one, funny enough, I mean, I watch the sequels once or twice a year, every year, but the original, I don't really ever watch. And when the new one was coming out, my wife and we got to go to a very early screening of it. Like I saw this movie like 5 months ago, and she had never really seen them, so we rewatched all of them, and that was my first time seeing the first one in forever. And I was like, at the end of the first one, I was like, I don't think that's a very good movie. I like, because 2 and 3, like I said, they're kind of one movie, so they have this complete kind of arc, and they tie up a bunch of loose ends from even the first one. But when the first Matrix came out, that's the only one in the franchise that we didn't know there were going to be sequels.
Sure. Yeah.
Even when the Matrix 2 came out, we knew 3 was coming a couple months later.
Right.
But the first one was supposed to be a standalone movie, potentially. And I feel like watching it in that context, the whole third act is a real letdown. Because it's like they build up this great world and this evil superpower of the Matrix and Neo becoming the one. And then the whole plot of Act 3 is to save Morpheus. Like, it just didn't really, like, I've always felt, I feel like when Neo gets shot at the end of the first Matrix and becomes the one, that's the break into Act 3. Like him getting shot and killed, that's the dark night of the soul, you know what I mean? And then he becomes Super Neo and he should go fight the fucking Matrix and take down the Matrix. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Which is, of course, what happened in 2 and 3. But again, we didn't know that at the time.
Right.
So 1 is the only one to me that doesn't really hold up in a way.
It's funny because I knew going into like all of these conversations for the Super episode, I would have some wildly different takes all across the board. But the Matrix 1 not holding up, that's a pretty big one right there. But,
I mean, look, yes, you're right. And I do say ridiculous things quite often on your show, but I will give it all the credit in the world for how revolutionary, bold, daring, and successful it was, however you define those terms. Like, it's like Lord of the Rings. Like, no matter what you think of it, it's kind of written in stone.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, and without it, we wouldn't have 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, so to bring it back, and the reason why I bring up the Reloaded and Revolutions, I feel like I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like most of the people I'm going to have on this episode are like me, didn't really like 2 and 3, and So I'm curious for you what the feeling was going into a fourth Matrix movie.
I was terrified.
Yeah.
I've been dreading it, in fact,
Yeah.
because I don't well, say dreading it is the wrong way to put it. I love the Wachowskis, like from start to finish. Every single movie they've made. I loved Jupiter Ascending. That movie was one Mila Kunis shy of being perfect.
Yeah. And I like it for different reasons, but you know, it's a midnight movie for me. And so
there's some really great lines in that movie. I don't know.
Yeah.
I love it. But so like the fact that they were making it, okay, great. We're already off on the right start. But there were so many, you know, for me, the Matrix movies, the bells and whistles, as shiny and loud as they are, all that can get swept away as far as I'm concerned. I love what they're presenting, what ideas they're presenting. And I also love the approach that they're presenting them as. It's literally a discussion presented as kung fu. You know what I mean? Which the Merovingian actually in this new one really addresses very well.
Sure.
Who Merovingian is my favorite character.
Yeah.
But in all of them, but especially this one. But I thought that like there was no better time to make a Matrix sequel now that society literally is plugged in
Right.
to the Matrix, you know, and especially the time they announced when they were doing it, that was like, you know, at the peak of Black Lives Matter and the Me Too movement and the beginning of the pandemic, you know what I mean? Like all this is happening at the same time. And it really calls into question how much control and freedom do we actually have? And I always thought an interesting idea for a fourth Matrix would be, well, now that the machines have been silenced and humanity is left on their own, would we be able to handle it? Or would society as a whole be like Cyrus from the first one, where he's like, no, I want back in.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I want the government to take control of me, but also they're a police state trying to, you know what I mean? Like that conflict we were feeling as a society. I was like, no better time for the Matrix than that. That's not what we got. And I was so nervous about that. That's why I was so happy to see an early screening. I told my friend who got me into it, I was like, I don't even care if the effects aren't done. I need to see it.
Yeah.
And what we got instead was a film about the artist's role in a revolution.
Sure.
And also very specifically about, honestly, I know it's going to sound crazy, but a society without God. Like, especially a society built on the idea of God, that then God no longer exists in that society.
Yeah.
That's what we got.
Yeah.
And I loved it for it. I had to see it twice. That's why I told everybody, because everybody who knows me is asking, did you love it? I'm like, I have to see it when it actually comes out, because all I cared about the first time was like, please don't suck.
Sure. Yeah. It's got a lot writing on it. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So,
well, we'll get into more of those thoughts along the way. What do you have for puzzle pieces here?
Okay. So the first one, I'm going to lean into it a little easy. I'm going to ease us into it. Hook.
Okay.
The reason I was thinking of Hook, Steven Spielberg's, just embarrassment. He's got a million of them. But have you seen West Side Story? Don't. The reason I say Hook is because you've got Peter Pan, who has grown up now, and he goes back to Neverland after what he thought was defeating Captain Hook. You know what I mean? And going back to being with Wendy, you know, to be with Wendy's granddaughter, Gwyneth Paltrow. But now he's back and he's searching for his children. So he's searching for the people that he loves back in this world, but he doesn't remember his place in it. And he has to like relearn how to be Peter Pan, you know? And I think that that's definitely like at the root of this movie. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like reconvincing, but unlike any other movie, like unlike Hook, this movie does, and I think the reason they took that approach was because they needed to readdress everything about the Matrix to get everybody on the same page once more. It's almost like the most brilliant exposition dump of all time.
Right.
Because this Matrix, and I think I told my friend, because he asked afterwards, he's like, do you think this movie's people are gonna like this? I said, I doubt it. Because it's not what Matrix fans expect of the Matrix.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not visually revolutionary, and it's not even as philosophical as it is. It's more just the movie is actually catered to 20-year-olds today. It's a Matrix movie for the Marvel era, where everything is clean, clear, and specific. You know what I mean? It's a movie that's meant to be discussed the second the credits are rolling, not next Monday at the water cooler at the office like the original one. It's not something for you to sit and think about. It's something that tells you what it thinks. Which usually doesn't work, but this movie really does.
Right, that could be really dangerous, especially, in sci-fi type movies when the thing that it wants to tell you is just some big, huge idea, and if they're just going to sit there just spouting it out, that could get so boring.
Right. But like Ghostbusters, the newest Ghostbusters movie, there's a real they reintroduced all the ideas that they had to introduce and then expand on by making the film a discovery, a mystery. Neo is rediscovering everything. So like even people who've never seen The Matrix but know about bullet time, like the fucking ad execs or whatever, it's that access point. And what I didn't appreciate the first time I saw it that I really appreciated yesterday when I saw it, in its final release, in its actual release and all that, was that the film is subversive in that it actually takes a lot of time to breathe. Like it still takes the time to feel for these characters. It takes the time to let them be flawed, which isn't the Marvel formula. And that's not a criticism of Marvel. But this movie is actually subversive in how felt the movie is. Like there's a love for these characters, but not a reverence in a good way. Like they love these characters so much that they've allowed them to be wrong. And this movie is a chance for them to learn.
Right. Well, I think we messaged about, what we thought about the movie and everything. And I said that this movie is Lana loving these characters first and foremost. That's what it is. And I think that that's something we just don't get that much, especially in this like level of blockbuster, the 100 or 150 in this case, $1 million blockbuster.
Right. Well, and again, I like how you're putting it though. They like Lana truly does love these characters so much that they don't have to be perfect.
Sure.
They almost remind me. I remember this story about Charlize Theron when she got the script for Fury Road. She was like, and they were like, play Furiosa. She was like, no, like this is not a real character. She's just some white knight that comes and saves these girls. And she said it wasn't until George Miller explained to her, no, she doesn't save the girls because it's the right thing to do. She saves the girls because she wants to get back at Immortan Joe.
Right.
So she does it out of like revenge, and so her motives are wrong. You know what I mean?
Lana is Furiosa in this scenario, right?
No, Lana's George Miller.
Okay, yeah, sure.
In that, like she wants the characters she lets the characters be wrong. She lets the characters and I think that's ultimately the thing missing from Marvel movies is that the characters are always right, except for Tony Stark, who's the worst character. I hate his character so much. Like, but like. They allow these characters to be and do wrong in good faith. You know what I mean? And we don't see that enough these days.
So what other piece you got here?
All right, I got one more piece, and it's I just want to make sure I get the episode number right. I pulled it up because I know the title. Okay, great. So it's South Park, season 22, episode 6, Time to Get Cereal. It is the episode where Al Gore comes back. And the kids learn that Man Bear Pig is actually not only real, but also a threat. This will make sense in a moment, I promise.
Okay.
So what was so crazy about the episode was that this was South Park. They're known for being the most like innovative and audacious creators, maybe right now, period.
Sure. Yeah.
And they made their episode originally about Man Bear Pig, which was about how stupid Al Gore was about global warming and all that. And this episode, which was, I think, 12 years later, was an episode where the creators, were admitting that they were wrong initially. And that the more that they've learned and the more that they've grown, the more they understand and the more they see that they were wrong in what they thought originally.
Right.
And that ultimately, that's such a key component to this new Matrix movie. It's no secret that the Matrix has always been like, an allegory for Christ, religion, let alone Christ, that Neo is Christ and that Morpheus is John the Baptist and all this kind of stuff,
Sure.
But what's interesting is that they end the original Matrix trilogy with Neo is dead. Evil is the devil is dead, which is Smith, right? And like the child, Sati, is raises the son on a new matrix, right?
Right.
So why that's interesting to me is that God, in this metaphor, if you will, Neo, is dead. He's gone. So now the
Sure.
Matrix has to rebuild in harmony with machines without God, right? And the Wachowskis are obviously spiritual, and you know what I mean? Like,
Sure.
very obviously. And what they've done in this movie is they've realized that from their perspective, a society without God is not going to function. It's always going to fall. And God being whatever kind of higher power you know what I mean?
Sure.
And so in this version of the Matrix, not only do they have God come back, but God rediscovers his powers through femininity with Trinity, right? Like, so this hand in hand thing. But then you also still have Sati, who was designed based on the love between Trinity and Neo
Sure.
in the originals. So, and Trinity herself being the completion of the Trinity to continue their Christ metaphor.
Yeah.
And at the end of this movie, they flat out tell Neil Patrick Harris, we're staying and we are going to be a part of the rebuilding from now on with a balanced perspective. You know what I mean? And I thought that was so, first of all, a crazy audacious move to make like a very pro religion, let alone spirituality move, winter blockbuster, I guess. But also the movie itself was kind of saying we only scratched the surface 20 years ago and we've actually learned more now. And then the reintroduction of Smith doesn't die in this one. Evil will not be defeated. That's not the idea. That's not the battle of good versus evil. It always exists, right? David Lynch summed it up perfectly in Twin Peaks, The Return, when Laura Palmer's mom is watching the boxing video and the guy in the white shorts keeps getting knocked down by the guy in the black shorts, but the guy in the white keeps getting back up. He never stays down, and that's the point, right?
Right.
So I felt like this movie was their way of like, and they also have things like the Merovingians saying like, look what you've done to society. You've turned discussion and philosophy into a video game. And like, they've realized that the idea wasn't full enough. And that's why we were able to take all the wrong things away from the Matrix. You know what I mean? We took the sizzle, not the steak. And this is a way of accepting that as artists, but also expressing what they've learned and almost atoning in a way for their shortcomings.
I like that in this read on everything, in the absence of like a godlike figure, what takes over? The entertainment business, Hollywood, basically. And I think that's so perfect.
Exactly. And again, I know some people are complaining that I know people are talking about the meta angle being lazy or something like that. But no, like, it almost reminds me of the new Spider-Man, which is that like, that's just how movies are these days, right? And the new Spider-Man, thankfully, when it brings in the two other Spider-Mans, they're not just cameos. It's not fan service. They're like, the story progresses with them. And you know what I mean? They become a part of the story that they're trying to tell. Whether or not it's worth telling is another story. But but it's the evolution of fan service, you know what I mean? And right now, we're in such an age of self-referential IPs, especially, that like, again, the Matrix, Lana wants to talk to a modern audience. You have to talk on their level. Because that's the point of being an artist. You know what I mean? That's something that I, as an artist, and a lot of artists that I know, especially out here in LA, fall into this trap where we think that every movie is supposed to be for us, but that's not the case. Like, there are a lot of people who, are older than us now that remember when The Matrix came out, and they're still just like, oh, that was cool, the bullet time, you know what I mean?
Sure.
But we like, when you're any kind of like professional in one way, you have a deeper connection to material. So like, this movie is not for the people kind of, I feel like, who grew from the Matrix already. This is for people, this is to introduce people to the Matrix. This is to speak to a generation that we are ahead of, in age only, of course. But like, this isn't necessarily for the Matrix fans, which is an interesting idea. But I, as a Matrix fan, I was very like excited to, dude, when Jada Pinkett popped back up, I was like, Niobe? I was like, oh my God. Like I that's the most I've ever like fanned out like in my life. I couldn't believe it. You know what I mean? So like I still dug it on those terms, but for the hardcores, for the people, it's not what fans wanted. And in a way, it wasn't for people who already knew what the Matrix was. But hey, that's the position Neo's in at the beginning of this movie too.
Last thing, and then we'll close it up. But I was just talking about this on another podcast about The Matrix, and I feel like this movie might not, well, definitely won't be as influential as something like the original Matrix trilogy, but I do feel like us, movie fans like us, movie people who pick apart every last little detail are going to be talking about it for a long time because of all those possible ways of reading this.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the beauty of a real piece of art. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they choose, and what's really exciting about the Wachowskis is that they've always chosen to speak an artist's language in the in the skin with the blood of entertainment. You know what I mean? Like even as far back as Bound, like they're like the Coen brothers in that way, or Tarantino, but Tarantino actually leans a little more on the cinema nerd side. But you get what I mean.
Yeah.
Another puzzle piece I was gonna say was like Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
Sure.
You know what I mean? Where this is a film that more exists as a way to communicate to like what is happening right now in entertainment.
Right.
You know? And whether or not that makes for good storytelling is a great discussion worth having. For me, this one worked like gangbusters. I absolutely love this movie.
Absolutely, me too. Well, Joe, why don't you tell people where they can find you and your films that you're working with right now?
We finally have the website, bluemeanspregnantfilms.com. It has every film I've ever made on there, features, shorts, documentaries. It also has contact info if you want to get in touch. Our newest film, Natasha Hall, is making its way on the film festival circuit. So hopefully it'll be in your neighborhood soon.
Awesome. Well, thanks as always for being here, Joe.
Thank you as always for having me.
All right, so up next we got Jack Hunter with us to talk Matrix Resurrections, someone who we should have had here on Piecing It Together long time ago. It's been a long time coming. Jack, how's it going, man?
It's going good, man. Going good. Just chilling down south, and in 2 days I will be heading your way. Well, at least to the West Coast, and then one day in Vegas. So, yeah,
nice. Returning to Vegas. Awesome.
I am.
That's the project. Last time I saw you was here. So.
Yeah, 2014 at what was it? It was a party for this Red Sparrow Productions or something that
that's right.
Never happened.
All the Vegas film things that like start and stop and happen and don't happen, and Vegas is a weird film town for sure.
I'm gonna completely agree with you on that. It's like, productions, they change as many times as Puff Daddy has changed his name, if not more.
That's true.
Yeah. And there's a puzzle piece. Bam.
There you go. That's the first one of the day.
Mic drop.
Sure. Well, I got to ask you before we start getting into some Matrix Resurrections puzzle pieces. I know you're a big superhero movie guy. I know you're a big found footage movie guy. Are you a big Matrix guy? Were you going into this?
I'm not gonna lie. I was not, like, how I went into this movie was not I didn't know what to expect. Just like, the new Spider-Man and all these other new movies. Lately, when I go to the movies, I try not to know a lot about them, if that makes any sense. And yeah, I was, dude. Like, I was obsessed. I don't want to say obsessed, because when Matrix came out, so did the Trench Coat Mafia and then Columbine. So you really couldn't wear trench coats because it was bad. 20. How much? Over 20 years ago.
Yeah. 1999 was the 20-year anniversary, and
so it was like a year prior. So yeah, I was into it. Now, when the sequels came out, what year did Reloaded come out? I know it was
2003. Both of them, surprisingly, they came out like 7 months apart or something.
Yeah, like February and then December, right? It was something
like that.
It was massive, and there was this big promotion at the time. I walked out of Reloaded and at the theater opening night, and I said, "What the hell was that?" Because the way they ended it, Like it was so weird. Like because at the time, you waited all these years, what 3 or 4 years, for or actually what 5 years, so 99, so yeah, I don't know, my math's
4 or
off.
5
4 or 5
years.
years.
Yeah.
So we waited all that
Yeah.
time to see Neo again, Neo and Trinity and Morpheus, and then the way they ended it was like, what the. I don't know if I should curse, but what that.
You could curse all
Oh,
you
okay, it
want.
was like, what the fuck. Man, I was so pissed
Yeah.
off. I didn't even go see Revolutions. I didn't even go see it. I waited till
Okay.
the DVD came out. I was so fucking
Okay.
pissed. Because I loved the Animatrix, the one that came out. It was like the prequel, only like true if you remember that, they tried to do something different, which was ahead of its time, using different animation styles to tell a Matrix story, which was a prequel to Reloaded. And I thought it was only going to be like 30 minutes, but no, it was like a 90-minute movie. And I fucking loved it. I loved the animation.
Yeah.
And, more characters made sense in part 2 to me after that.
Sure. Yeah, no, the Animatrix really kind of ties all that together. And on my recent rewatch of the whole series, including Animatrix, which I had never seen up until just a couple of weeks ago.
Really?
That really, yeah, it made me appreciate the sequels a little more, even though I still don't think they're very good. First one's amazing, but it definitely helps tie it all together, though.
What I will say before we get into our review is, like, at the time, okay, so people that are listening to this podcast, and you're like 22, 25, 27. Hell, actually, before 30. Let's just say that, because, if you're before 30 and you have never watched The Matrix, or you've watched them, you got to think about this. At the time, they amped this movie up to be groundbreaking, just as big as the original. So in Reloaded and Revolutions, we thought we were going to get this top-notch CGI, amazing fight scene in both of them. Now, granted, the fight scene was badass, but CGI fucking sucked. When they would mash in the animated CGI with the real actor, it was obvious that it wasn't Keanu. It was like CGI fighting, Neo fighting Smith. It wasn't really him. And they amped it up, and it was so bad. It was just not symmetric to the way a body would move. Even though it is the Matrix, I get that, but it was nowhere near it. Nowhere near it. Nope.
It's interesting to hear you say that, because going into Resurrections, now I'll just say right now, I love this new movie. I'm not sure where you fall on it. We'll find out in a minute, but I'm hearing a lot. Obviously, this is a very polarizing movie, and one of the main complaints I'm hearing is on the CGI, on the quality of the CGI. And so the fact that you're saying that Matrix 2 and 3 didn't have as good of a CGI as the first one, maybe people should have been ready for that a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah,
because I kind of agree with you.
No,
you
yeah,
know?
I completely see. That's the thing too. And yes, I absolutely loved it. I was actually watching
awesome.
with before the show, and I didn't realize it was like almost a 3-hour movie. So, because I asked you, I was like, so in an hour, right? And you're like, yeah, that's when our show is. And then I was like, okay, I should have some time, and it's going, and it's like, fuck, I didn't realize how long this movie was. But dude, it's so much. I will say, upon second viewing, it's better than the first viewing. Like it's to go and wait for 20 years for a great sequel or reboot, and I'll leave it at that, I'll say. But they did it. They did it.
Let's get into some puzzle pieces for Resurrections here. And feel free to spoil away as you're going through things.
Should we spoil them?
Always assume that people... Yeah, spoiling is fine. We always put the spoiler warning at the beginning of the episode. This is a podcast about digging deep in. People should have watched the movie first. So feel free. What do you have for your first puzzle piece?
My first puzzle piece, and I think this is going to mind fuck everyone, because some people may have not seen it, because it was a box office flop. But one of my favorite actresses is in it. I'd say actor, but that would be kind of I mean, he's okay, But Jupiter Ascending with Mila Kunis, and Channing Tatum. And my puzzle piece to this is the movie. I guess the synopsis is it's really deep. and I think that's what you're really going for here, is finding out your whole life was fake due to you not knowing / realizing who you are, seeing that you're greater than everyone else, knowing it, but not knowing why.
Yeah.
So it's like in the Matrix Resurrections, Neo, Mr. Anderson, is his whole life in this version, it knows he's great, but he doesn't know why. He knows he's meant for something. He obviously sees life differently and just can't grasp what that thing is, what that niche is.
I think that's a really great piece to bring into this, and it kind of speaks to the Wachowskis. Like, a big theme for them is figuring out, who you are, and that is like a big part of a lot of their movies. I would say that even goes into Speed Racer as well, but definitely with Jupiter Ascending, and I actually like that movie.
Me too.
I like it for,
not gonna lie.
I like it for different reasons though. I think it's one of the most ridiculous, spectacular, ridiculous movies. Like, and it's so much fun to watch. I don't necessarily think it's good. It's probably like towards the bottom of the Wachowski ranking for me.
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I do enjoy it though. I've seen it like 2 or 3 times, and it's so much fun to watch. Like, they go so big on it, and I appreciate a filmmaker that goes big like that.
Oh, absolutely. And it's like when it feels like when they made it, they tried really hard, and you can tell they wanted this to be a box office smash, and it could have been, but I again, they made a movie ahead of its time. If this movie would have came out right now, it'd be a hit because of the love story, because of being different, but always knowing you're meant for something more. It's that positive vibe. And if they did like a reissue of it, like they do with all these old movies, but they keep picking the wrong ones to re-release or reboot or whatever the fuck you want to say. And if they pick these certain, I think it's going to be a cult classic, in all honesty. I think in like 10, 20 years, people are going to look at this and be like, damn, that's Magic Mike. That's the chick from fucking that 70s show, if they're old enough. And be like, how I never seen this, I just love and it has that superhero vibe too as well. Flying elves or whatever the hell Channing was.
It's a crazy ass movie for sure, and they're throwing everything they could into it, and it's wild.
It's Cinderella. That's what the movie is. It's a space Cinderella. Think about it if you've seen it. But so go check it out, guys. It's not bad.
Absolutely. And I will just say there's a lot of fairy tale going through all of the Matrix movies as well. We brought that up in our Matrix trilogy episode, and it's all throughout a lot of this stuff, and so it totally makes sense there. But what do you got for your next piece?
Minority Report, starring Tom Cruise.
Okay.
The reason I say this is because something that knows you're about to do something bad, in this case, but prevents you from seeing your own destiny. Something else that forces you to make a choice, not on your own behalf or will. Basically, I would say the puzzle piece to this is how this machine that already knows what you're going to be, like this computer will know if you're meant to be greater, but will put an obstacle in your journey without you even realizing what's happening. And that is what the Neil Patrick Harris character is doing. And that'll go along with my next puzzle piece. But he instinctively or intentionally gave him the blue pills, so he wouldn't find out what amazing person he is. That's the truth of it. And that also has a lot. I would say that part of the movie is more real today than anything, in the sense of, Dave, you have so many talents. Okay. Jewish Dave, you do the music, you do the beats, you do the scoring, the podcast, and everything else. And that's as if, and what I'm referencing this to, it's like if I knew you were that good and I intentionally fucked you over so you wouldn't get to that next level. And that goes into the real world, like, you know, in situations that have happened with me as a filmmaker, and me wanting to be great or greater, but then and someone else is jealous of that, so they cut me off.
In this scenario, you sound like Facebook and Twitter algorithms, making sure none of my shit gets out to anybody.
Oh,
that's what it sounds like.
yeah, no. I didn't even think of that. I apologize, but no, that's the truth.
Perfect. That's great. It's the machine, right?
Yeah, right. The machine. Like, you want to post something on Twitter, but then Twitter is like, oh no. See, this is real, and we can't let people see it. Nope. You know. So it's exactly that. Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I love that piece, and I love that explanation of it, and it kind of leads into that whole separate thing about social media and everything that this movie is commenting on, and just how people are basically just locked into all this and happy with it, and
don't
they're
realize
always going to be happy with it because it's human nature, unfortunately.
Yeah, and we just accept it. Some of us just accept it. We there are
some of us.
Yeah, some of us. But you got to see through the bullshit, and that's with life in general. You just got to see through all the bullshit and make your own opinion, and not let something else sway your view. Like, do your own research, type of thing. And and I'm not saying anything towards what's happening in the real world right now. I mean in general. Don't pretend you're a doctor, type of stuff. And I'm not anti-vax or anti anything. I'm just telling you, just in wow, I'm just seeing this though. The context, the subcontext of the what word you use? The narrative. I think the sub-narrative of this is making your own choice, your free will.
Yeah.
That's all.
It's all about choice, these movies.
Yeah. And having free will. I think that's what I'm really actually just realizing as I'm talking. That is exactly what this movie is. The subcontext is free will, and it's something that we need to take advantage of in this day and age with everything.
Absolutely. Well, you said you have one more piece for us?
I have two pieces. Oh,
you got two more.
Yes. Okay. Remember, you said you had a rebuttal for one of them, and I'm like, I'm interested.
Oh, yeah.
All right. So this one may take everyone off guard, but The Truman Show, starring Jim Carrey, classic. Again, ahead of its fucking time. All these movies were ahead of its time in that sense. And my piece is having your life already predicted to fit the narrative of someone else, while you think you're in control, when in reality, your steps are being altered by a bigger presence. So
absolutely.
I think, in that movie, this guy having no clue about the real world, everything in his life was fake, just like everything in Neo's life within the Matrix is fake. And you have Smith and Neil Patrick. What is his character? Is he a virus? I don't even know his fucking character.
The analyst. I guess he basically makes decisions for the machine as to what the humans in the virtual Matrix world are going to be doing, and like what our lives are going to be like.
Right. Okay. That kind of makes sense. Okay. So in the Matrix, it's the doctor. He's, how can I say, discrediting his feelings and dreams to fit his narrative throughout the whole damn movie. Like up until the point where, Neo comes to his enlightenment. And by the way, I love that struggle because we didn't see that in the first three films. Of like, no, this can't be real. In the first one, he just was like, oh, okay, cool. Because
very Keanu-ish.
Yes, and Keanu is one of the best actors of all time. Hi, Chad. And every one of his movies is quite amazing. Again, hi, Chad. And I can't wait for John Wick 4. Oh, hi, Chad. Anyways, okay. My next. Do you have any rebuttal for that one?
No, I completely agree, and I recently rewatched it, and it's fantastic. It holds up so well, just like the original Matrix does. And great piece, absolutely.
Okay, so this next one is huge spoiler, but Spider-Man: No Way Home, and my piece is, this is a long one. What we are seeing is an alternate universe. We think we are watching a sequel to the original, But with one glitch, things are sent into an alternate timeline. Hence, why Agent Smith and Morpheus aren't the same actors. One glitch in Spider-Man leads us to a multiverse to where we don't really understand what is going on until the end, when in reality, we are still asking ourselves, what the fuck just happened, in a good way. And it's where meta meets nonfiction meets expectation. Whether or not your expectation was high or low, the end result is all up to how you expected it to be. Could be a good expectation or a bad expectation.
Interesting. Okay.
It was deep.
Well, I like the way you I like the way you put it. Aside from the fact that it's too new to have really inspired this movie, I think it does make for a good companion piece in a way. So yeah, I did have a rebuttal to this though.
Okay.
And I think it's an interesting piece, and I think these movies definitely can be in conversation with one another. But I feel like and don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed Spider-Man No Way Home. It's a lot of fun, but I feel like that is a way to take the idea of going back into the world of a movie and just kind of folding in on itself with every possible reference to previous versions of its own franchise and doing it in a way that's kind of empty and just for fun, whereas Matrix Resurrections is referencing its own self and referencing everything that's happened in the previous Matrix movies in a way that opens up new questions and new interesting ideas.
Right.
And to me, that's more of an interesting way to do things. And I don't know, I obviously more people are going to see Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's the biggest movie of the year, and everybody loves it, and I don't blame them. It is, like I said, a lot of fun. But personally, I just think that I get more out of a Matrix Resurrections.
I you know what? I will agree with you on that. I think the thing is Matrix Resurrections is a very smart movie, and I say that meaning like. I don't, it's going to sound really bad, but I don't give a fuck. If you're not intelligent on another level of, I guess, science fiction, where you can actually blend, the lines of reality just for a little bit while you're watching a feature film, then it's not your type of movie. Go see Spider-Man, where it's like in your face, where you don't have to think because it's all revealed to you. And yes, that experience was fucking amazing. But Resurrections, how can I say, just like the movie Us, okay? I don't know if you like that. I don't think you did like Us.
I was a little mixed on it, but I do appreciate it for bringing up a lot of interesting ideas.
Right.
Sure.
So these movies are deep, and when you're expecting everything to be revealed to you, it's not going to be good. It's not one of those movies. And it's unfortunate because they won't get the experience like we do because we followed it for over 20 years. But you're not going to get it because you're not invested.
There's a lot. There's a lot to keep track of, and it's definitely not for the faint of heart. Like, you got to invest yourself in it, and that's a big ask nowadays, for sure.
Oh yes. And it's I know. I see the time that's recording, and I'm like, holy shit, he only said 10 minutes. I apologize. See, guys, this has been in the works for 5 years, everyone. Okay, I have commented on several accounts. Saint Jack Hunter 2, JHP, and I'm finally on it. So, and Chad is gonna.
We finally got you.
Yeah, and you're not gonna be able to.
He's
get rid of me.
He's gonna be so happy to hear this episode for sure.
Oh, Chad,
Jack, why don't you tell people before we get going? Tell people where they can find you and your films and everything you're up to.
Alrighty, here's the big plug, ladies and gentlemen. You can find Horror Nights coming soon to Dark Side Releasing, worldwide Blu-ray release. Go to darksidereleasing.com. You're gonna I don't know if you'll see it there yet, but maybe pre-order is there. I don't know. But we finally launched that one. Paranoia Tapes you can find on Tubi, Amazon Prime. I don't know why Tubi only has a certain amount on there. It kind of pisses me off because I make a lot of decent money from Tubi. But hey, I don't know the logistics of it, but go watch it there. You can find special cuts of the films on YouTube. Just type in JHP LLC and our channel will come up, and I have some different cuts of the movies. You can buy the DVDs on eBay, actually, which is quite amazing. Put my name in on eBay, Jack Hunter, boom. I mean, this knockoff Indiana Jones comes up too, but you might want to put Paranoia tapes on there, and you can find all. Dude, we should do a puzzle piece on that, man. Like, oh my god. Anyways, featuring Jack Hunter, and we're discussing Jack Hunter, National Treasure, blah blah blah. Anyways, you can find it on eBay. I mean, I don't make no money from there, but guys, I mean, instead of spending like $16, $17 on Amazon, you can get it for like $4 or $5 free shipping on eBay. So go there. I support the sellers, which sucks. They're selling my movie because they apparently didn't like it, or they got in bulk. I don't know. But
seeing a different side of the movie business. Right?
Yeah. It's the dark side. But yeah, and JHP Studios on Facebook. Check us out there. Paranoia Tapes, Horror Nights. I do have a Jack Hunter filmmaker / podcaster page. But yeah, so that's where you can find me. Facebook, all that. I do horror artwork, digital art at Fixed Horror Art on Facebook too. So yeah, that's pretty much it. And
awesome. Well, Jack, thanks so much for being here. And
I was going to plug you.
You got one more?
I was going to plug you.
Oh, okay.
But we'll wait for that.
All right, JC is back with us. JC from Screen Fix fame, of course. JC, how's it going, man?
It's all right. It's good. Surviving. Yeah. It's always an honor to be here, to be on this podcast with you, David Rosen. Is it a stretch to call you a podcasting sex symbol? Is that a stretch? I don't think it is anymore. I don't think you can deny it anymore. I just think that's what it is. It's facts.
I'm not going to fight you, but I don't know if stretch is the right word. But
don't fight me.
All right. Let's talk about Matrix Resurrections. How about that?
For you.
JC, are you a big Matrix fan?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I saw the Matrix when I was quite young. I think I saw it. I think I had just graduated high school, I think. And I saw that movie, and I remember it was one of the few movies where I think I was already starting to get, as in my early 20s, I was already starting to get like too cool for some movies. You start like discovering, when you get a certain age, you start discovering like indie movies and different movies, because because high school kids like that stuff. I'm a grown up now. I have to like grown up stuff. No, but like I remember seeing The Matrix, and it was one of the only movies that I saw. Like, you never think that you're after every kind of movie you see that's a big event in your life, like a Star Wars or something like that. You never think you're going to have that feeling ever again. Mm-hmm. And Matrix came close. It was one of those movies where you watch it. It was so different. It was so exciting. The special effects were so incredible and groundbreaking, and the end was so dramatic. The music, and he's like, he is the one, and then he jumps, he stops all the bullets, and he's all fighting with one hand, and you're just like, you're filled with that feeling that you always think, I'm never going to feel that again, but then you always do. About a couple years later something happens. Like with Avengers Endgame, I was like, I'm never gonna feel that again, but then I saw Spider-Man, and I'm like, whoa. It's not that you're never gonna feel something again, you just have to wait a while. That's all. But Matrix was a big movie. Matrix 2 I fell asleep in. Matrix 3 I saw and was like, okay, that was some cool action. That's about all I can say about those movies. I mean, I think it's not such a secret that 2 and 3 are not loved as much as 1. They kind of dive heavier into the mythology and the side plots and Zion and the real world, and those are not the most interesting things.
Right.
Although I think this movie doubles down on that, which is kind of interesting. But this movie, oh my God.
So we might as well get that out right now. You're the first person I know of the people I have scheduled to talk to.
Yeah.
Some of them don't like it, but you're the first one I've talked to who doesn't like it. I love this movie.
No.
So we might as well jump right in and we'll get into puzzle pieces, but along the way, I definitely want to hear your grievances because, this being a super episode, that's the whole point. Let's get to a whole bunch of, points of view on this thing. But what do you have for your first piece here?
Well, here, I can preface this. Ready? All right. Rosen, let me ask you. Do you remember the Trinity opening from Matrix 1?
Yes.
Do you remember Neo going into an office and getting a phone call and being told to go to the window and jump?
Yes.
Remember Morpheus? Remember agents? Remember the pills? Remember warping in and out? Remember camera shots in glasses? Remember cats? Remember running up walls? Remember the white rabbit? Remember bullets falling in slow motion? Remember eating steak? Remember gunfights in sprinkler rain? Remember Agent Smith? Remember Neo struggling with what's real? Remember the construct or the white room? Remember fighting Morpheus in a dojo? Remember Neo saying he knows kung fu? Remember bullet time? Remember punching columns? Remember neck tubes and pink goo pods? Remember Zion? Remember Niobe? Remember the architect? Remember Neo flying at the end? Remember the motorcycles? Remember the Merovingian? Remember dreams that feel real and come true? Remember trench coats and sunglasses? Remember Smith saying things are inevitable? Remember them saying Smith is killing him when he's fighting him? Remember a character telling somebody to stop calling them that name before finding a bunch of strength? Remember characters multiplying? Remember robots rushing to get to the heroes in the real world? Remember a helicopter rising into frame dramatically? Remember putting up your hands to stop bullets? Remember wondering if Neo is going to make the jump? Remember Roland, that girl's grandpa? Neither do I, but it's all in there.
Wait,
all of it.
You missed one. You missed one. You went through all that. Remember the Rage Against the Machine song?
Remember the Rage Against the Machine? Yes. Remember that stuff? So we just watched, a greatest hits of the first movie. I mean, he doesn't remember he's Neo until the hour mark of this movie, and we have just rehashed point after point after thing you remember after thing you remember after thing you remember after thing you remember. This is the stalest piece of trash I've ever seen in my life. So basically, he doesn't remember he's Neo until at the hour mark of the movie, and even then, he still needs to believe in himself. Like, we've already been through this with him. Like, he's already been through this. He jumped into Smith in the first movie. He bent the spoon. Why does he have to fight anyone in the Matrix at all? Why do all these people doubt him? Why does he have to remember all this stuff? It takes so long for us to get the ball rolling. And once the ball is rolling, it's not even that interesting. It's just more rehashed plot points from the first movie. This movie does nothing new. Oh wait, there's two new things: robot puppies and a ball bearings man. So there's two new ideas in here. And other than that, it is just a legit greatest hits. Look at this. Don't you remember this? There is nothing. This movie, there's nothing fresh in this film whatsoever. In fact, I was watching it, and actually, the second time I watched it, I was feeling more and more insulted by it. That it does nothing. They want me to sit through a movie that's doing nothing new, nothing. They're literally asking you to sit through the first movie again, just in a different way. See, the problem with this one is this movie is using the amnesiac hero trope, right? But the problem is the amnesiac hero trope only works when the audience doesn't know who they are either. And you go through this with them. If we already know who he is, and we have to sit through the amnesiac trope for 2 hours, not interesting at all. That's why movies don't work this way. So it's and some examples of like the amnesiac trope. Of course, I'm going to throw out some pieces like the amnesiac trope are movies like The Long Kiss Goodnight, Born Identity, Captain Marvel. Those kind of movies where somebody just has powers and they don't know why, and people are telling them who they used to be and all this kind of stuff. So there's a couple pieces there, but really the piece is just the overused amnesiac hero trope, which doesn't work in this case because, like I said, we know who he is already. We've already seen this guy, so we don't. So it's not interesting. There's no mystery. There's no excitement.
So I have to ask, and I don't want this to go too far down a tangent, but what did you think of Ghostbusters Afterlife?
I loved Ghostbusters Afterlife until Gozer again. I'm like,
same thing.
I'm like, are we seriously doing Gozer and the Devil Dogs again? Like, are we doing this again? Why? Why are we doing this again? Like, you could do, like, there are so many. There are just ghost stories after myths, after legends, after so many things that you can do with this, and you went right back to Gozer. That was like another one where I was completely on board until it was Gozer and it was Devil Dogs, and then you start like, like rinse and repeat, like, oh, the girlfriend's gonna turn into the Devil Dog, the mom's a Devil Dog, the two people that, it's just gatekeeper and keymaster. I'm like, oh, like I was doing the same thing. I was like sighing and kind of rolling my eyes, like, why are we doing this again? Why can nobody come up with like some kind of different story for they did not have to do that. And of course, and my podcast Screen Fix is exactly what we do, is talk about what we would have done to make it different.
Sure.
So my brain always goes there. But yeah, I thought the same thing. I thought this does it worse.
Okay. Well, so I'm gonna play along just for the sake of the conversation, even though I don't agree, but I'm going to say maybe I give Lana Wachowski a little bit too much credit, because to me, all of that is in service of the meta plot, of commenting on the nature of blockbuster sequels and how similar they all are. Just give the audience what they want over and over again, which is a big part of the narrative here and a big part of what I think works so well in the movie. I'm sure that you don't see it that way, that you see it as it just is that thing.
Yeah, I don't want The Matrix to be a commentary on blockbusters. What?
Okay.
Why? Like, what?
Okay.
That's not, like, the Matrix isn't like satire. Like, it's so out of place for this franchise.
And that's fair. That's fair. Absolutely. To me, though, I feel like we aren't going to get it maybe ever again. And I absolutely applaud the boldness of someone like Lana Wachowski actually using the ability to make a Matrix sequel, $150 million Matrix sequel, and using it for that purpose. To me, it's different. It's different and unique, and I think it's exciting.
She did. She used her greatest franchise you're right. She used it like a piece of trash. And she just used it and threw it away like a dirty diaper. It's not good. Like that's not what you do with the Matrix, and that's what makes it so polarizing. Is the Matrix is not something that you use to make your own commentary. It sounds pretty selfish, if you ask me.
Interesting.
So yeah, I don't. It's just not. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see it your same way.
Yeah, I don't fully disagree, because I do think it's a strange choice, definitely. But I love that we got that, because it's just something I don't picture ever happening again, and didn't happen ever before exactly this way.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask Keanu Reeves, what he said about it is, he said that Lana wrote a beautiful love story.
Which I think is also part of the movie.
So even the actor in this movie, he's not seeing meta commentaries. He's seeing a beautiful love story. So
I also think it's a very dense movie full of a lot of ideas, and I do think the love story is a big part of it as well.
Which, of course, is a love story that we already had in our first trilogy.
Do you remember that love story?
Do you remember that love story from the first one? Yeah, involving the same two people. It's like ridiculous. So anyway, actually, something that goes right along with this is one of my more like legit pieces is Force Awakens.
Sure.
And actually, the entire Disney Star Wars sequel trilogy, and I'll tell you why. So Force Awakens kind of does this same thing, callback after callback after callback, sometimes even making fun of old callbacks. So like, all kinds of things, like when they called the Millennium Falcon a piece of trash, and the Millennium Falcon was originally called a piece of trash in Star Wars. So all those kind of same recognizable those recognizable callbacks old characters showing up again and essentially rehashing beat by beat the same story, just in a new little box, right?
Yeah.
So I think it has a lot in common with Force Awakens, but let's jump to Rise of Skywalker for a second. So now we have it to where Neo and Trinity are some kind of super duo. They're both powerful, but together they're super powerful. Do you remember that ridiculous plot point in Rise of Skywalker
I try not to.
where Rey and Kylo were a Force dyad? Do you remember that? They said they were a Force dyad, so they were like together they were super powerful. Like it's so really, I think this movie is like watching this Disney Star Wars trilogy in a condensed form.
And I think that's so funny because, like, and again, we're coming from different sides of this, and me loving the movie, you hating it, but to me, it's The Last Jedi. And to you, it's the other two in the trilogy, and I think that really just comes down to how you see the movie and whether or not you connect with what they're trying to do here. Is which version of Star Wars you see in this? Because to me, it's the movie that messes with what this particular series is, and to me, that's exciting and fun. Whereas I totally understand someone who doesn't like The Last Jedi probably isn't going to like this either.
The Last Jedi is terrible.
Right, see? And it's my favorite Star Wars
Why do I want to watch a movie about some casino message about the military-industrial complex and then a slow-motion chase about running out of fuel? Like what? Like who said that's what I want out of my Star Wars movie? It's terrible. Like that's awful. And then like a non-fight fight with Luke Skywalker. Luke Skywalker's grumpy and drinking blue titty milk. This is stupid. Like that movie's awful. Like that movie's that movie is actually shot really, really well. That movie's, I think, is gorgeous, sumptuous. I like the aliens. I love the shots. I like the throne room scene, even though when you watch those really funny YouTube videos about the choreography of the fight, and you just see people in the back fighting nobody, which is hilarious. If you go back and watch those videos,
I've never noticed that.
It's hilarious. There's people that are just in the back doing moves and not fighting anyone, and it's really hilarious, actually. So, but yeah, so I think there's a lot of just that same brand of rehashing old ideas and Force dyad from the Star Wars series. And then if I want to be real quick here, I know you're doing your super episode, super special. So happy to be part of your super special. The beginning where they're watching Trinity's scene from the first movie, that reminded me of like Back to the Future 2, when essentially Marty's watching the events of the first movie.
Yeah.
But he's like, you know what I mean? Like, so I thought of that for a second. It's just like a random thing.
That's a better version of Spaceballs, which is what I was thinking of when I thought of that whole.
Really? You're watching it.
Yeah.
The movie uses that weird slow-mo jumpy blur for like when Neil Patrick Harris is, well, you find out that he's the architect. When he's using his slow motion, it's like this weird jumpy blur. And it looks like the same jumpy blur that Ridley Scott uses in his movies. For example, like you can see it really clearly in the movie Gladiator when they're doing their battle in the forest. They use this really weird jumpy choppy blur, and I was like, where have I seen that before? And I'm like, oh, Ridley Scott movies. So yeah, they look, when they were in slow-mo, they look like weird Ridley Scott blur.
That's interesting. I'm going to have to go back to Gladiator or some other Ridley Scott movies that use that, because I did not put that together. That's an interesting one there.
First, I thought, wow, that looks like bad 80s slow-mo. Like when it's you know how in the 80s when they would do slow-mo and it was so blurry. It just looked like big old streaks, and it was all shaky and terrible. Yeah,
well, it reminded me of Ant-Man and the Wasp was the thing that came to mind for me.
Oh, really?
The ghost character, but I don't know.
Yeah, see, me, I was going, boy, that looks cheap. and you were like, "That looks great!" Like Ant-Man, looks
like
modern effects.
That looks like the most charming Marvel movie.
we watched two different things. We literally watched two different things. And I saw it in the theater and at home on HBO Max. Have you watched this movie more than once?
Just once so far. I saw it in IMAX, and I'm planning on rewatching it this week. So,
all right. Well, you better get on it here.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
So do you have any more that you
can't
want to bring
up?
On
your own show watching it more than you. No. Yeah, I have one more as a small one. The people jumping out of the windows reminded me of the M. Night Shyamalan movie, The Happening.
Okay, for sure.
Remember when the people were just like committing suicide? There was that scene where people were falling out of buildings. They were just jumping off, committing suicide all over the place.
Yeah.
That reminded me of that. I was like, ew, gross. Oh, and also, did you notice how they got away with making that scene not gory? You probably did not notice this because you've seen it only once. So when they drop out of the buildings and they land on the street, instead of red blood, it's green code.
That's awesome. How is that not cool?
It's terrible. That's how they got away from making it gory. Yeah, because then in the very next scene,
that's like Mortal Kombat on Super Nintendo.
No, but then in the very next scene, characters who were fighting have red blood on their face, and you're like, well, hold on a second. Is blood red in the Matrix, or is it green with code in it? Because I'm really confused.
It's a cool visual, man. It's a really cool visual. What do you want from Lana Wachowski and company?
But, oh my gosh.
Well, those are great pieces, man. I really like, as much as I'm on the total opposite.
Yeah.
You said it. We watched two different movies, but those are great pieces, though. Anyway, I really enjoyed those, and I think it's awesome. Any closing thought? Anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap it up?
Yeah, sure. So I wanted to love this movie. I thought the trailer was so good. I was like, oh my God, this trailer is so good. And I find that I'm falling for trailers a lot now. I just think trailers are so good, and I figured a few things out. So trailers now, what they do is they don't give you any the Don Fontaine, like, oh, and he was a mild-mannered guy with a big secret. They don't tell you that. So what they do is, and I think movies are actually missing that, because he used to just give you the plot and he'd be like, great, now I got to figure out the plot through all the pieces, right? I got to be like, I don't know. So I think that hurts smaller movies where people don't know what the plot is, so they're just not going to go see it. But one thing is movies now, what they do is, so they'll show the trailer, and what it is they will have a cover of a song that you've heard, right?
Sure.
And they manipulate you. Even if it's not your favorite song, you suddenly have some kind of emotional connection now to that. Go, oh, I know that. And now mentally, psychologically, I'm like, imprinting upon this trailer, or it's and like, I think it's just like trick. I think I'm just getting tricked by these trailers, and the visuals are so good in these trailers. I have no idea what the plot is, but it's got the neat song and a lot of cool little visuals. And I'm like, yay. And I go march to the movie expecting something grand, and I get tricked a lot these days. I'm like, oh my gosh, I want the voiceover just telling me what the plot is. I don't want your psychological marketing tricks.
How do they trick you, JC? It's the analyst. That's how they know everything about you, and they give you exactly what you want in that trailer.
Awful, I know. Terrible.
Yeah,
it's all science now. So yeah, I put that. There's that. But also, I just want to say thank you for having me on again. Love being on this. Please be on ScreenFix again. We love having you. You're a ScreenFix all-star at this point. You know it. And so yeah, if you want, please check out my podcast, ScreenFix, screenfixpod.com, Spotify, all that stuff. Apple Podcasts, all that stuff. Also, half of my time has been devoted to Greenlight Cinema in downtown St. Petersburg, Florida. I've been hosting something called VHS Club there, where I show a classic movie and then I host trivia around it. Prizes sponsored by different podcasts. You want to sponsor a prize? You can, David Rosen. Just hit me up.
I want to. I want to go to that. That sounds like so much fun.
It is a lot of fun. So yeah, so there's that. That is Greenlight St. Pete, Greenlight STPETE.com. You can get tickets there and stuff like that. But yeah, thank you, David Rosen.
Thank you so much for being here, man. And I look forward to joining you again over there on Screen Fix sometime
David
soon.
Rosen, Sex Idol.
All right, so Pete Abeyta from Middle Class Film Class is with us to talk some more Matrix Resurrections. Pete, how's it going, man?
Doing great. Glad to be on the show.
Yeah, this will be fun. You are my fifth of the day. I'm not sure yet if we're doing more. I originally had 7 lined up. I think you might be the last one, though. We'll see what happens.
Wow.
It's a lot of Matrix talking. Let's just put it that
That's a
way.
marathon.
Yeah, it sure is. But yeah, I've been starting this with everybody by asking the obvious question, which is, are you a big Matrix fan? Were you excited at the prospect of another one?
I don't think the answer to that question is not the same.
Okay. Yes, no, or no, yes. It goes one way or the other.
Yeah, the original Matrix was one of my most memorable movie-going experiences in theaters. It was I was pretty young at the time, and I went with my older cousin who was like 4 years older than me, and it was mind-blowing, obviously. I mean,
How old were you, roughly?
I was born in '86, so
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I
A
was
little
just
younger than me.
just barely going into high school, and it was like, wow, these are concepts I've never even thought of it before.
Yeah.
And first time I ever saw someone smoke weed in a public place was in that theater, and I was like, we're all gonna get arrested. And then I did like the sequels, obviously not as much, but I didn't have the ire for it that a lot of people do.
Right.
And I was optimistic for the fourth, I guess, the Resurrections, but I was not really hopeful. So, and I did not find a whole lot of joy in it.
Okay.
Yeah, it led me down a path of sorrow.
Okay. So we know where you're at here with this one then. We know that this did not quite work for you as far as
a whole.
As a whole, as a movie itself. And we'll get into what didn't work for you. We've had a very interesting mix of love it or hate it. And this is a very polarizing movie, which I think it was always bound to be. But we'll get into what you didn't like and maybe what you did like along the way. But let's jump into some puzzle pieces. What do you have for your first piece?
My first puzzle piece is The Cell from 2000.
Okay.
And that's the idea of sending someone in this case, into his consciousness in the Matrix, and in The Cell, it was into his dream, to lure them out and bring them back into reality. And they also explored that in a much more lengthy way and not so specific way in Come True of this year, which I really liked.
Oh yeah, Come True is really great. And I believe, I'm trying to remember back to when we did the episode, I believe that we did discuss The Matrix as a possible puzzle piece for Come True. And I'm actually surprised now, because we did just do a special Missing Pieces episode on the Matrix trilogy. I'm surprised we didn't bring up The Cell as a movie that may have been inspired by The Matrix, because yeah, I mean, it definitely deals with that same kind of thing of, what's real, what's not real, going into this dreamlike world and pulling somebody out. And yeah, I think that part of what happens here in Matrix Resurrections kind of doubles down on that and kind of raises the stakes of needing to show that person what's real and what's not real.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things I like about The Cell, I mean, I like that movie a lot. It's kind of a guilty pleasure, even though as years go on, it's less thought of as a guilty pleasure and just as a cool movie.
Yeah.
But the suits that they use to go into the brain is the same suits that they use in Bram Stoker's Dracula at the very beginning.
Really?
It's the actual same prop. Yeah.
Huh.
Or the red ribbed full body suit.
That's really wild. I have to rewatch that movie. It's been a long time since I've seen it, but yeah, man, that's one of the things. And whether you like this movie or not, whether you like other Wachowski movies or not, I think we don't have enough filmmakers who just explore just crazy visual ideas like this, and The Cell, of course, being another one, Come True being another one. I just think that that's a very, very unique and exciting thing. And so many movies are kind of, just kind of going to the same well when it comes to particular kinds of visuals, but these people really try to push things in different ways.
Yeah, I think we talk a lot on our show about, what people are trying to get out of a movie. And I know a lot of people like that didn't like, say, Dune, that were of the most recent Dune was basically, well, the story didn't do a whole lot, and it was just a bunch of flashy visuals. But I fell in love with Dune, and I don't need the story to be super rich. And I feel like almost with Matrix Resurrections, it's like I can almost forgive lack of a plot rather than a bad plot or a plot with holes. So I would rather have there be less of it than something where I'm like, okay, I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense, but what about this? And I have come up with 3 things off the top of my head that kind of poke holes in the plot as we're given.
Yeah, and I partially agree, but at the same time, I think then you get something like Revolutions, which, doesn't work for me, and partially because of the plot and like, what exactly are we even doing? Things just get so kind of messed up. But, I did think in my recent rewatch that the Battle of Zion, if nothing else, looked cool. So it's like, visuals, there you go. There's cool visuals.
No, that's a good point. I mean, yeah, there was a lot of questions left unanswered in the number 2 and number 3 as well, but
yeah. So what do you got for your next piece?
My next puzzle piece is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind from 2004. Okay. And in Eternal Sunshine, anybody who hasn't seen it, stop what you're doing and go watch it. It's amazing. Yeah. Great high concept movie. And there's a technology created to pull someone out or pull someone's memories out of their brain. And you have to go in and do it manually, which Elijah Woods does dutifully. And you're kind of given a tease in that at some point that it's not the first time that this has happened to either Clementine or Jim Carrey's character. I can't remember his name.
Sure.
And in this, it's basically the same thing. It's Thomas Anderson or Neo is getting his memory wiped again. And then again, and then when he jumps off the building, he gets it wiped again. Yeah. And it continually happens for the benefit of someone else that's not him.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a great piece. And I'm really glad you brought this one up because you're the first person to bring up a Charlie Kaufman related project. And yeah, when I first saw this, like that was my first thing. And this is why I love the movie so much. It's a Matrix movie by way of Charlie Kaufman's kind of storytelling. And I do really appreciate just how weird Lana Wachowski went with this. And of course, meta is the word that's thrown around over and over again with this movie. And I think people's taste for meta will dictate whether or not they like this movie. And for me, I love that. That's just some of my favorite movies are very meta. And, especially dealing within the worlds of Hollywood, again, something that Charlie Kaufman, comments on a lot. I was reminded especially, at the beginning of Adaptation, how we are with Charlie Kaufman just at the actual making of his last movie and how he's like, obsessing over Catherine Keener and just how honest but ridiculous and weird and just funny all that is all at the same time. And I just think that that's so beautifully done here in The Matrix Resurrections. But again, if somebody's not on board with the meta-ness of it all, it's just going to fall apart.
Yeah, I did appreciate the meta aspects of it. Those were probably my favorite parts. The whole pitch meeting, internal pitch meeting for the Matrix, the sequel to the trilogy game. I loved that. I was confused why Christina Ricci had such a small role. I mean, they could have had anybody in that.
Yeah,
but didn't like irritate me or anything. I love Eternal Sunshine. It's first thing I thought of when I started watching it. I'm like, this is like he just keeps getting reset, poor guy.
Yeah, poor guy. Well, what do you got next?
All right, next puzzle piece is 2 of them. One is lesser well known, and that's Freaks from 2018, which I absolutely loved it. Never hear anybody talking about it. It's so good. And Looper from 2012. And that is the concept of, in Looper, the Rainmaker is essentially other people trying to tamp down or quell down the power of this powerful character. And in this case, it's Trinity and Neo together. They're constantly being kept apart to keep their power in check. And in Looper, it's Emily Blunt trying to keep the Rainmaker, not necessarily hide his power. I mean, ultimately yes, but just keep him in check a little bit. And obviously, that's kind of the whole plot of Freaks.
So I actually haven't seen Freaks. This sounds like something that I'm going to need to seek out.
Well, I won't say a single peep more.
Okay.
I'm not even going to elaborate on that. It's absolutely worth the watch to go in as blind as possible.
Okay.
2018.
Well, I've got something to add to my list here for sure.
Cool.
Awesome. Do you have any other pieces you wanted to bring up?
Yes. I have I have a weird one. Space Jam 1996 and Kill Bill 2004.
Well, okay, so not particularly weird on their own, but weird brought up in the same sentence. Let's go.
Yeah. And it's just a very small part, but it's a trope which I like, and I always like to see it is calling a character by the wrong name, which sets them off.
Sure.
And the reason why I love it is, for one, in Space Jam, it's Lola Bunny, the heartthrob of all preteen boys from 1996.
Sure.
And she says, don't ever call me doll. And it only pops up twice in the movie, but it's memorable. And then in Kill Bill, it was Oren Ishii, not necessarily calling her the wrong name, but basically misappropriating her nationality.
Sure.
Pointing out that she have her white heritage and Chinese heritage. And I always liked that. They do the same thing in Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels to a lesser degree with Vinny, I can't remember the character's name, mess with his son and just sets him off.
Yeah.
But in this, in Resurrections, the great thing that I really liked is Trinity is set off because she's called Tiffany just one too many times, and right on the brink of her letting go. And she's like, don't call me that. I hate that name.
Yeah.
To her beau. And my name's Trinity. And that's almost exactly the turning point of Neo in the original Matrix, which is almost a nod to saying, well, maybe she's actually is the one in this one.
Yeah.
So I like that little breadcrumb that you get to lead you towards, she's getting unlocked and maybe she has a bigger role than, we think. And Neo kind of was a wet noodle throughout a lot of this movie. And I liked the swap of Trinity with him, and that I think was the turning point for me.
Yeah, no, that makes sense for sure. And that moment is such a fun moment, but also such like a heavy and powerful moment. And yeah, it's great for Trinity. And Tiffany is like the best wrong name to be calling her. It's just so perfect.
Hey, Tiffany. Yeah, it just sounds condescending.
Yeah, totally.
And then I do have one more puzzle piece if you like.
Okay, go for it.
The in-universe reference to an original prior movie. In this one, they do a really good bend on it where it's a video game.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that aspect of it, that detail, and I don't think any series has ever done it better than the Scream series.
Sure. Yeah. Scream is on my master list of possible pieces for this if I was the one giving pieces. There's so much Scream in this, but definitely the callbacks to its own series is a big part.
Yes, the stab of the movie based on the killings, and it's even better in Scream 2 because specifically mention if they're going to make this into the movie, she's going to be played by Tori Spelling or something.
Yeah.
And then they get Tori Spelling to be in Stab for Scream 2.
It's perfect.
Absolutely, it's so perfect. Good. I loved it.
That's a great one. That's a great piece. Absolutely. So I got to ask because I haven't done this with the other guests, and it's not something I normally do, but just because you seem to be kind of back and forth on how much you like the movie, I'm curious, on a star rating out of 5, where do you land on this?
I probably put it like a 3.5.
All right, so that's not bad.
No, I didn't. It's not like I hated it. It's not going to make any of my bottom lists, but it would probably make one of my more disappointing lists. Like Demonic from this year made my most disappointing list because Blomkamp is CGI god, and then you get one cool monster that's underutilized and a technology that I think they could have done a lot more with, come true.
Yeah.
And so that movie let me down quite a bit. And this one, I tempered my expectations. So it wasn't the worst thing that happened to me that week when I watched it. But I was like, man, it's just the Matrix. I was hoping for more, you know?
Right. I fully understand. And I feel like this is a movie that is going to reward multiple viewings. I feel like it's,
for sure.
It's so packed with so many themes and so many ideas. And, maybe they won't all work for everybody, but there's certain things I think that you could latch onto and just be like, oh, well, it's great for this. And
I can agree with that for sure.
Yeah, for you, maybe the meta part, but not so much some of the other parts of the story or where it takes certain characters maybe. But there's going to be something that you'll definitely keep from the movie.
One of the things that took me out of it was that I really like Chinese epics, like Crouching Tiger, Hero, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the fight choreography and just the realism of it in the first Matrix, and even to probably about the same extent in number 2 and 3, was on par, probably because it was choreographed by some of the masters.
Sure.
And you just can't do that with a 55-year-old Keanu Reeves.
Sure.
It just can't happen. So it's almost like, you look in your refrigerator and you have all the ingredients to make something, and make the best thing you can with those ingredients. And they used way too much Keanu fighting for me. I'm like, it's fighting young Morpheus doesn't have the same punch as, Lenny Fishburne or Larry Fishburne and him duking it out as, young man and old, not old, but seasoned veteran. There was a lot of that and a lot of things that I'm like, okay, that I see where they're going with it. And there was a lot of really cool things. And unfortunately, a middling review for a movie like this high concept, I feel like is almost worse of a review than saying it was 2 stars. I hated it completely.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, I just hope that Keanu is filming as many John Wicks as possible over the next 12 to 14 months before he gets too old for more of it. But yeah,
I want Something's Gotta Give too.
Okay.
That's what I want.
Yeah,
I want him to be the young doctor, and this time he's betting Betty White instead of Diane Lane.
Nice, I like it. There's a movie right there for sure. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Pete, why don't you tell people where they can find you and your podcast?
Yeah, sure. Look us up on any pod stream you subscribe to. We're on all the big ones and all the small ones too. It's called Middle Class Film Class. We release twice a week. Mondays is movie news and review and streaming recommendations, and Wednesdays is one deep dive review that we choose at random. And we have a lot of listener interaction. So Middle Class Film Class, and if you want to write in to have us review a movie, all the contact information is in all the show notes.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for doing the super episode, and hopefully we can get you back for a regular episode sometime soon.
Absolutely. I'd love it. Love the show.
I'm Josh Bell.
And I'm Jason Harris, and we co-host a podcast called Awesome Movie Year.
Each season, we take a look back at an awesome year for movies, which is every year.
We deep dive into these specific years, and we pick out why they were such great years for films. We go over the biggest hits, the biggest flops, the best pictures, some personal picks, some cult classics.
Years we've covered in past seasons include 1994, 2003, 1977, and 1984, and we've got all of film history to look forward to. So check us out at awesomemovieyear.com or wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right, so I hope you enjoyed that conversation about The Matrix Resurrections. Thank you so much to all those guests for joining me here to talk about the movie and bringing all those different points of view and all those great puzzle pieces. Make sure to check out all of their podcasts or films or any of the things that they're up to. You can find links to everything they do in the show notes. Before we wrap it up, I did want to mention quickly, since I didn't really do the whole puzzle pieces thing on this episode, it being a super episode, of course, a few other pieces that I had in mind that I might have brought up if we were doing a regular episode. I was really happy that Pete brought up Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind so I could get into some Charlie Kaufman in there. I did mention adaptation. I definitely would have gotten into that a little bit further in a regular episode. Pete also mentioned Scream, and I definitely think we could have gotten into New Nightmare in there as well. Some other pieces, JC mentioned The Happening for the part where everyone's throwing themselves out of the buildings, and to me, that reminded me of that Fast and Furious movie where all the driverless cars are driving themselves out of parking garage to create obstacles in the big chase. I think that might have been a Hobbs and Shaw, actually. I'm not sure, but it was one of the Fast and Furious related movies. And that also kind of reminded me of like World War Z or any of the fast zombie movies. You know, there's a bunch of those. Also, Cabin in the Woods, which is, you know, kind of a deconstruction of its own genre that kind of turns in on itself in all kinds of weird meta ways. So I think that could definitely have been part of the conversation. And last but not least, Edgar Wright's Hot Fuzz, which is just amazing. But for being, you know, the kind of movie that's commenting on its own genre while also just straight up being an awesome entry in its own genre at the same time. So I think that those are some things that we definitely could have gotten to, and I'm sure there's plenty more. Do you have any puzzle pieces that you think we should have brought up for The Matrix Resurrections? If you do, let us know. Definitely get in touch. We are on Twitter all the time at PiecingPod. You could also join our Facebook group, Popcorn and Puzzle Pieces. And, you know, as always, just get in touch any way you'd like. We do appreciate the 5-star ratings over there on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts. No, Pocket Cast doesn't do 5-star ratings. They should. Podchaser does, though. And Good Pods. Lots of places you can leave us a nice little review if you'd like. Or just make sure you're subscribed so that way you can hear the upcoming new episodes. We've got a top 10 of 2021 coming up. We also have a top 10 first-time watches of 2021, something we started last year. Josh Bell from Awesome Movie Year joins me, and we talk about movies that are older that we watched for the first time in 2021. That will be a fun episode. And then, of course, lots of new movies in the new year to cover. So lots coming your way, so make sure you're subscribed. And don't forget about the Patreon, of course, produced by David Rosen. Lots of great stuff over there. So let's wrap this thing up with a piece of music. And I think this being a big episode, it would be a good time to preview some music from what I've been working on for my next album, which will hopefully be out in 2022. And I think I actually played this on the show either the beginning of the year or the end of last year, because I had just made it and I was really excited about it. And I thought maybe I would finish this album this year, but that didn't quite happen. Although I did release a whole other album, The Dissection Table. And a single. I put out a lot of music this year, but this didn't come out yet. So I'm going to play it now, and it will be on the album that comes out hopefully in 2022. I'm pretty sure it'll be out in 2022. But this track is called Burn. There's actually already a music video for it, just waiting to get released. And I look forward to getting this album out there. So I hope you enjoy the track. Very electronic, very matrixy, so I think it's a good fit here. And yeah, we'll be back in the new year with a lot more piecing it together coming real soon.
All Points West production, produced by David Rosen in Las Vegas.